"Holmes," I cried, "is it really you? Can it be that you are alive? Is it possible you succeeded in climbing out of that awful abyss?" Welcome back to Kevin Toll Reads, where I am here talking about Sherlock Holmes. And I have another tale that we're going to talk about, my review of the tale The Empty House, published in 1903 by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This mystery, well, it was a mystery to me because, lo and behold, this was the entry point to the return of Sherlock Holmes. And so that is very timely. So let's jump right into the summary. Watson has taken an interest in a strange case of a young aristocrat who was found shot to death in a locked room on Park Lane. But the criminal investigation really isn't going anywhere. And although there's huge public interest, it's just not progressing. And then readers will recall during the final problem, which was the predecessor's tale that I read and reviewed on the channel, that in that last story, we get kind of the last story in the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes in the fatal incident at the Rickenbach Falls, which Watson was there in Switzerland. But lo and behold, can you imagine his surprise when an older gentleman carrying books bumps into him and then makes an appearance at his place to profuse his apologies, and lo and behold, the old man is none other than the disguised Holmes. And that might seem like a spoiler, but it's really not, because the book in and of itself has its own mystery and twist, and we uncover that both Holmes and Watson are both after the second most dangerous man in London. And so that's the summary of this story. What makes it really good? Well, obviously we have Holmes's return. That in and of itself is just worth the read. It's a short read. It's about less than 20 pages. But I really feel like this is a nice continuation story from the previous entry, The Final Problem. Obviously, if you're familiar with Sherlock Holmes or Conan Doyle, you know he was heavily ostracized for killing off Sherlock Holmes. And so upon that outrage, he goes and writes back in and does his memoirs in return of Sherlock Holmes collection. This was actually the first one. I didn't know that when I took upon reading this, and it just feels right. I really felt like how he wrote this, it makes sense. It almost feels like a continuation from the previous story, The Final Problem. To speak the parlance, I think it's cheekily done. How he introduces us back to Sherlock Holmes just feels right. You know, Holmes is in disguise. Watson's down on his luck, and the next thing you know, it just flips the Watson's personality. It's very, very well done. It just, everything about it screams Sherlock Holmes. I really enjoyed hearing more in depth about Holmes's point of view during the incident with Moriarty at the falls. We get to see kind of some of the aftermath, how he used what is perceived death to aid him and abet him into evading Moriarty's minions, and how that plays into this story. You also get to hear about Holmes's travels, which I found very interesting, as he's explaining some of this to Watson. And then you get to see a lot of Watson's emotion related to Sherlock Holmes' reemergence. And that kind of dovetails nicely into the excerpt that I want to read you. And so we are just after Holmes makes his appearance on Watson, and he says to Watson, "Work is the best antidote to sorrow, my dear Watson," said he, "and I have a piece of work for us both tonight, which, if we can bring it to successful conclusion, will in itself justify a man's life on the planet." In vain I begged him to tell me more. "You will hear and see enough before morning," he answered. "We have 3 years of the past to discuss. Let that suffice until 9:30, when we start upon the notable adventure of the empty house. It is indeed like old times when, at that hour, I find myself seated beside him in a hansom, my revolver in my pocket, and the thrill of adventure in my heart." And that was Watson's kind of point of view, and it just speaks volumes to the relationship between Watson and Sherlock Holmes really, really well. Overall, this is a fantastic tale. These are so good. I just feel like they for written over 125 years ago, they still have this staying power. Obviously, that's going to be something that I'm going to be talking about in one of my let me know videos. But with that being said, I just feel like these really offer a lot. I'm really glad I took upon myself the challenge to do some episodic kind of tales and reviews about this, and not knowing that there was going to be this Holmes is Where the Heart Is February event. And I'm glad that I am trying to add my own kind of take on that and add some content out there about Sherlock Holmes. Now, with that being said, I also wanted to throw out there before you tune off that I am working on my deep dive character study for Sherlock Holmes. That will be forthcoming next week, as well as I'm going to read and review A Study in Scarlet. And I've never read that before, so I'm very looking forward to that. So that'll be on the itinerary for next week as well. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this. This was a fun read, The Empty House from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I hope you enjoy this. Take care, and I'll talk to you all in the next one.